This isn't personal. It isn't political. This is just what the data shows us. Dads matter more than you think. Let's get into it.
The first standard a child measures manhood by. When God chose a title to reflect his own power, his own heart, he chose this one.
My name is Casey, and I started this channel to try to promote a future of faith, fatherhood, and freedom in America, and part of that is trying to promote fatherhood. And fathers have been stomped on, messed with, and cast out of every family structure that the liberal world order could possibly cast them out of. It's time to bring fathers back into the home and back into right standing. If you can get behind that at all, please like on the way in, share, and subscribe. We can do a better future for our kids together, but for that we must have fathers as much as we can in the home. Let's get into what the real results are of having a dad.
First voice his son will ever listen to, the first shelter his daughter will ever feel safe beneath, the hand they don't know they'll spend their whole life reaching for.
There will always be people who come in the comments and say that there's caveats, there are bad men, there are bad fathers, there are abusive husbands, and of course, with all those caveats aside, we know that there are bad dads, there are bad moms, there are kids who are reckless. All that does not necessarily change the results of the data, and I wanted to share some of that with you today because dads deserve a chance to be paramount in their children's lives, and when they aren't, bad things happen within the family. Kids without dads are 2 to 3 times more likely to struggle with depression, anxiety, and emotional disorders. I've seen this in my practice as a therapist for the last 13 years. Many of the children who come into my office have struggles with absent fathers, and many of those dads may have been cast out due to reasons other than their own conduct. However, there are also the adults that I see in the substance use treatment industry. Oftentimes, when I take a straw poll, a great many of them grew up without fathers in the home. Higher risk of self-deletion in adolescence comes along without fathers in the home, and they have significantly higher rates of behavioral disorders. That when fathers are present, emotional regulation improves and there's more stability, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, along with the APA.
The Bible calls a father to train his children in righteousness, to walk before them in strength and mercy, to discipline without cruelty, and love without weakness, to speak the truth even when it would be easier to stay
Kids without
silent.
fathers in the home struggle much more in their education. They are 2 times more likely to drop out of high school. They have lower scores in reading, math, and cognitive testing. Boys without dads are far more likely to be suspended or expelled, hence the behavioral emotional regulation part of it. And college completion rates drop sharply. There are even some statistical analyses that say that kids without a father, boys without a father in the home are more likely to go to jail than to graduate college post-high school.
There is no greater calling, no greater burden, no greater crown. Because a father stands between the world and his home. He fights battles his family will never see, prays prayers they will never hear, bleeds wounds they will never understand.
If you don't have a dad in the home, you're obviously more likely to go to jail. 70 to 85% of juvenile detention residents say that they don't have a dad in the home or that their dad is disengaged. It is one of the strongest predictors of violent crime later in life, and incarcerated men are overwhelmingly reporting absent and disengaged fathers. Some statistics that have been run recently say that if you don't have a dad in the home, you're more likely as a man to go to jail than you are to graduate college.
Starts the moment that child takes breath and heaven marks the man beside him as guardian, not of flesh, but of destiny. Because raising a God-fearing child in this world, it's not parenting, it's a mission.
Without dad in the home and without that second income, even though females are working towards out-earning men in total, children who grow up without fathers are 4 to 5 times more likely to grow up in poverty. Single mother households account for a disproportionate share of welfare recipients. And intergenerational poverty skyrockets because you at least miss the mark on the opportunity to have dad's provision, income, and protection, even when they're paying child support, that isn't as significant as if they were integrated into the home. And if you remove fathers, government expands, the necessity of government grows. And I think that that's one of the reasons why fathers have been so maligned in the public square, is because the government wanted to grow itself. Every Leviathan does. And that's part of the reason why so much of the marketing has gone towards single motherhood empowerment. And there are great single moms out there. There's nothing wrong with being a single mother. And obviously, in many cases, you ended up there without your own, it wasn't your fault. However, the church is there to support single mothers. The government comes in and swoops in to support single mothers. It's up to us to try to restore those relationships with the fathers, because they too suffer when they're cast out of the household or when there's a divorce or other separation that happens.
When your child starts to think, the battle begins. They won't have to search for darkness. It will come knocking. They will scroll past lies that feel better than truth. Be taught to question God before they ever learn to pray.
Kids who grow up without fathers in the home have obviously a higher instance of substance use and risk of substance dependence. I've seen this a lot in my therapy practice, as I've mostly dealt with adults, but they come in having had difficult relationships or no relationship with their father. Sometimes they don't even know who it is. So there's higher early spicy activities among adolescents and teens when there's no dad in the home. Perhaps there's the extra set of eyes or some consequences that are kind of held by the father in the home as his placeholder, as the authority in the house, hopefully an authority in the house. And risks fill the void when guidance is missing. So kids will feel they need integration, they need teaching, they need to begin to understand the world through the eyes of one of their peers, and hopefully also through an adult man who's able to give them proper warnings about what adult men are like, where the risks are, and where to seek their presence and seek their investment as a young person, as an adolescent. Children in homes where the biological father is not present are much more likely to be abused and neglected. And this obviously has something to do too when there's a non-biological adult man in the household. That might be the person who's most likely to commit some type of abuse. But the stepkids, sometimes are treated a little differently by somebody who's not a biological parent. Obviously, the risk of spicy abuse or, taking advantage of types of abuse increases sharply. That risk increases sharply when the biological father is not in the home. And fathers aren't the threat. Bottom line, fathers aren't the primary threat. Their absence is. And if there's no dad protecting and watching over their biological children who's there persistently, the risk of abuse goes up. Boys without fathers in the home report higher aggression, lower impulse control, greater likelihood of joining a gang or other destructive group of peers. Boys don't need fewer men, they need better ones and present ones. And if society, along with the sort of world order that we're engaged with online, is casting fathers into this negative role and a negative perception, we will continue to get negative results in terms of who boys and young men are getting their information from. Girls without a father in the home report early onset puberty and less likelihood of withholding their spiciness until adulthood, if you know what I mean. There's higher rates of teen pregnancy, so obviously that speaks to the same thing. There's more unstable adult relationships. So we are given an inherent desire to seek the love of a male authority in our lives. Sometimes that's the father, as sort of a parlay into a relationship with God, hopefully, but that is innate in us. It's inherent in us to want to seek that stability and that love and affection that comes from an adult male. If we don't get that from the fathers in the home, ultimately that might be sought elsewhere, and that's where some of this begins, spicy relationships or other ways that they're seeking affirmation from men that aren't necessarily good for them. This isn't about trying to promote the fact that dads are perfect. Of course we aren't. I have 4 kids. I make a lot of mistakes. I make them every day. But my presence there matters. And it's not about shaming single mothers. Single mothers deserve our respect and our desire to serve them as they ultimately try to rebound from what is a very difficult situation. What this is telling the truth about what the data says. fathers matter and kids pay a high price when they're gone. And if we are evolutionarily wired to try to help our progeny thrive, then we must integrate fathers back into the home and give them the place that they deserve in the lives of their children. And if you can get behind that in the new year, or if you're a dad struggling to try to connect or reconnect with your children, please comment that. I want to support you. And if you're a single mom, God bless you. I hope that you can get all your needs met from external sources that don't necessarily come from a potential person who wasn't good for you, or institutions that aren't necessarily helpful but want to keep you down, governmental institutions that might keep you down. This isn't to shame you. I hope God blesses you in the new year. And if you can get behind any of this, please like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate so much your support.